Welcome, everyone. I'm Annette Insdorf, and you have no idea how delighted I am, what a personal joy, not just professional it is, to welcome Hugh Jackman for this virtual 1 hour talk. While you might know him best from his incarnation of Wolverine in the X-Men series, especially Logan in 2017, I'll just remind you of Les Miserables, which resulted in his Oscar nomination for Best Actor in 2012, and he won the Golden Globe. His dramatic work from Chris Nolan's The Prestige in 2006 to Denis Villeneuve's Prisoners. His more comedic work, as in James Mangold's Kate and Leopold back in 2001, or Woody Allen's Swoop in 2006, and his unique blend of song and dance leading man in The Greatest Showman as P.T. Barnum. This versatile native of Australia is also a Tony Award winner for his incarnation on Broadway of singer Peter Allen in The Boy from Oz. And I can tell you, I saw that in 2004 and I thought it was remarkable. I'm going to suggest that all of you have a speaker view. That may be the best, which means it'll read gallery view. And in terms of the way that we're structuring this, because the numbers are very high, we've got a few hundred people here, we're probably going to use chat as the primary way for people to raise questions. I probably won't be able to read every single one of them in real time. So 92 Wise, Ashley and Julie are helping to sort of make sure that I see all the chats. I'll check my cell phone every now and then. And we will try to get as many of your questions in as possible. I see that chat is already lively, especially because everyone wants to say hello to Hugh Jackman. I think that we all know that you're not just a really gifted performer, but a rather nice person that has been coming through in a lot of ways. So welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, Annette. Hi, everyone. Thanks for, I'm looking at some of the chats, people from Australia, Adelaide, wow, you're up early, everyone, Ellen, all these, wow. Terrific to have you guys.
Tucson, Portland, okay, yeah. Not bad.
Panama.
Right. Sorry. So I'm going to ask one or two questions to get things started because, frankly, I was bowled over by Bad Education. It is currently on HBO, directed by Corey Finley, script by Mike Makowski, and I really enjoyed this dramedy based on a true story that was chronicled in a New York Magazine article of 2004 by Robert Kolker called The Bad Superintendent. So Frank Tassone, your character, was responsible for turning Roslyn High School into one of the state's top achieving public schools. Your performance is so juicy that I found myself sympathizing more with your Frank, an embezzler, and Allison Janney's morally dubious Pam, than with the idealistic student journalist whose article for the high school paper exposes them. So for starters, how did you get involved with Bad Education?
I was sent the script from my agent, read it, and I thought, oh, this is really interesting. But on the page, I couldn't quite tell the tone of the movie. It felt like 2 or 3 genres in one. Parts of it felt Coen Brothers-like. It was a real-life drama. It was almost like a thriller at times as things unfolded. And so I then did a little more digging about who was slated to direct it, which was Corey Finley. And Corey had only done one movie before, which was Thoroughbreds, which he wrote as a play originally, by the way. And I watched that movie and I was 20 minutes into watching that movie, which to me was a beautiful example of combining genres. It's a great movie if you haven't seen it. It came out about 3 years ago, Thoroughbreds. And I just, 20 minutes in, I turned to Deb and I said, my wife, for those of you who don't know, I said, I'm going to do this movie because it answered my main worry. I loved the story. I loved what it had to say. It's not a story about let's tar and feather someone, let's drag someone through the mud. It's more a cautionary tale, I think, and a chance to really understand how these things come about. I kind of feel bad for Frank that article, The Bad Superintendent, that was the headline because he was a fantastic superintendent. He was the #1 superintendent in the country, highest paid. He got Roslyn School to #4 in the country, probably would have gone on. He was a fantastic educator and somehow lost his way. How that happens was fascinating to me. That kind of quicksand element of how things can so quickly unravel.
Yeah, and in fact, one person is asking, Lisa, did you feel that sympathy for Frank when you approached that character?
Sure. I mean, as an actor, it's not sympathy. You've kind of got to fall in love with your character.
Yeah.
If you're judging your character, you should just fire yourself immediately because there's no chance you can embody it. No one, very few people, I think, are walking around thinking they're a bad person. Even ones who end up going to jail, there's a justification that usually people find. And then they find various ways to kind of find redemption if they do bad things. But all of us actually have things that haunt us. I would say sometimes they're small things. They're things we did in the past, the way we treated someone. All of us have, and how that comes about, how we cover that up, how we try to present a different version of ourselves, to me is really why I got into acting. That's the study of human nature. So for me, it's more than just being sympathetic to Frank. I really wanted to, from my perspective, understand how that could happen. Yeah.
And Karen is asking, did you create all the nuances for Frank, like the lip biting, or did you study footage of Frank and notice that he did those things?
That's a great question. I studied a lot of footage. I work with a researcher who I found through Anne Hathaway on Les Mis, actually, Amy Stevens, who's phenomenal. And she read so many books and articles, and I had about 7 hours of videotape. There's a lot on the public record because Frank was a very public figure prior to this whole scandal. So there was a lot out there, and I watched a lot. The hair is very much from him. We never really tried to attempt to do prosthetics. I was never really going to look like Frank. We took the bet that most people wouldn't really know what he looked like around the world. So we didn't, but there were various things that, some things I made up in my head, some things that I got from watching him. But I wasn't slavish to try and do a impersonation of Frank.
And am I right in assuming that you never met Frank Tassone?
No, when I first inquired about this, and by the way, I came straight off another movie where I played a real life character, Gary Hart. So I'd done that just before, and I had spent a lot of time with Gary, and I'm still in touch with Gary and friends with him. And that's a great privilege. It's also, it certainly adds to the weight of the responsibility. And as I say this, I've heard Frank speak even, since the movie came out, and it's a very big decision to play someone that is alive when you're in some ways dredging up the worst time of their life, as it was for Gary. He would say to me, he goes, wow, of all the things, I have to make a movie about the worst week of my life, and so it's a really hard thing to consciously bring back a very painful period, not just for Frank, but for the entire Rosslyn community. And the only way that I could do that was by understanding that it's not a movie about just sort of bashing Frank. It's a movie about human nature, and it's a movie about how on earth does this happen and how can we learn from it. So it's a long answer, Annette, but sorry. When I was first talking with Corey about it, I said, I'm in two minds. Should I contact Frank? And I was told that I shouldn't or couldn't legally for some reason. So I just thought, I'm just going to leave it. And there was a lot on the public record.
Right. Now, I know that at the end we read the title saying that Frank was sentenced to 4 to 12 years in prison. I understand from some research that he served 3.
No, I think it was 4. I think he served 4. I heard him say that in the podcast. 4 years. He knows the days.
Oh, okay.
Every one of them. But he was released early. He was a teacher in there. He taught many of the inmates various subjects. He did a lot of programs in there about education within jail.
Do you know whether he has watched it and had any response to the film?
I do know because there's a podcast, I think it's called Coach Mike. I think he's a life coach. I hadn't heard the podcast before, but he interviewed Frank before it came out. And then he gave him homework and he said, I want you to watch it on Saturday night. And I want you to write down everything about the movie that makes you feel something strong, whatever it is, anger, humiliation, embarrassment, whatever the feeling is. And so I then listened to about a 30-minute follow-up of him watching the movie. So yeah, he saw it. And very difficult. He said it was very painful, obviously. And he said, you know, not all of it was true, which of course is right. We made various adjustments just for telling a story. And tonally, of course, I'm sure the comedic side of it, the dark comedy side of it must have been difficult. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you something, besides the fact that I like the comment that came in, I think it was from Jane, that Frank Tassone should be flattered that it was you who was playing him. I remember, and I actually jotted it down, the Variety review by Peter de Bruges had the most wonderful line about you that I'm going to quote for everybody. Hugh Jackman isn't the actor I would have expected. He's more movie star than character actor. And this role presented him in such an unflattering light, quite literally so, shooting its cast such that their skin looks like raw chicken and every wrinkle casts a shadow, that you'd think his agent would have advised him against it. That's what's so courageous about Jackman's decision, and one of several reasons that Bad Education is the best work he's ever done, unquote.
Mm.
You probably read that before, but any response to that kind of perception?
My agent did want me to do it. My agent sent it to me. So that part's not true. Actually, you know, one of the things I have to say, I've had my agent Patrick Whitesell for 22 years. He was the first agent I had in America, and he's been very much a big picture, big view kind of agent. He was always like, okay, what's the 50-year career? What does that look like? How do we do things? I remember him saying, you know, you do so many different things from theater, you sing, you dance, you can do action, all of that stuff. There will be a period where it's difficult because people won't quite know where to put you. And then at some point it will crystallize. And he was saying to me just on the phone today, he goes, I think that point has happened. And yeah, it's a very, very nice comment. I don't know. I think I've always been, if I am a movie star, a reluctant one. I'm a lover of acting. I love acting. My hero, I would say, acting wise, many of them, but one of them would be Paul Newman, because I think probably no one had more movie star mega wattage or whatever you call that. You just couldn't take your eyes off him on the screen. But if you look at the parts he played, even the height of his power, they were just great character pieces. Every single one of them, you know? You're
right. And actually, as long as you're mentioning Paul Newman, my husband, Mark, recently when we were watching Burt Lancaster, actually as a trailer on TCM for Elmer Gantry, he thought that you, in some way, are the closest contemporary thing to Burt Lancaster in terms of the physicality, the ability to do comedic, dramatic. Was his work at any point important for you?
Yeah. He's one of the many that I absolutely love. That is a compliment I will absolutely never forget. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Because for me, he was always surprising, bold in his choices. When there was a great power, when he was still. Sweet Smell of Success, I just saw recently. And again, I was surprised again, just that kind of the weight he had, the power he had, the stillness he had. I think some of his drunk acting is the best I've ever seen. I mean, he really, you're right. He really could traverse any genre and any type of character.
Now, Ellen is saying, ooh, Lancaster, yes, I could see you in a remake of Sweet Smell of Success. And Mark and I were thinking a remake of Elmer Gantry might even but I'm not going to do that. I'm trying to get as many of the chat things down as I can, and I'm not really able to get all of it. But for example, Louise was asking, somebody else was asking, how hard was it for you in Bad Education, you, a natural dancer, to dance badly on the disco floor? Did that take more rehearsal than other scenes?
Not rehearsal, but it might have taken more takes. It was something I was very, very conscious about. I don't talk about it a lot, but for me, the physicality of a character is something I've always taken very seriously. And I think it's because coming from the theater world and understanding a little of Lecoq and understanding that your physicality is as important as your voice. And often on film, there's such a even in the teaching of how to act on film, there's such a emphasis on the eyes, the face, the what's going on in your mind, the thought process, and allowing the camera in, that sometimes the physicality can be just a little bland, I find. And with every character, I create something. And I start off, I've always done this since drama school, was walking around a room. And I just start walking as me. And then I try to find a more neutral version of me. And then I just start playing with different things. And in this, the first thing that came to me was his walk. And I decided to walk with my feet out, a little more duck-like. And then we tried on, fat suits and all different things. But the physicality is very important to me.
Yep. And a few people have actually mentioned, is there any chance that because of the new Academy rulings, which are no longer for at least 2020 requiring that films open theatrically to be considered for Academy Awards, has there been any discussion among the bad education folks about eligibility of the film and you for Oscar consideration?
I don't know about that. Someone sent that to me, and the article that I read said that there had to be plans for a theatrical release. But from the moment this went to the Toronto Film Festival last September and HBO bought it, there weren't plans for that, I think. But I heard in a phone call yesterday that in some countries there is a theatrical release of Bad Education. So, by the way, those people in Australia, I'm sorry, it's not out now. Don't look for it. It comes out mid-May. I don't know about England, but anyway, it'll come out at some point. But we'll see. I try not to focus too much on that.
Well, there are quite a few comments along those lines, just so you know. And to go back to this question of playing real life characters, because lately, it's 3 in a row in a way, P.T. Barnum, Gary Hart in Frontrunner, and Frank Tassone. It's also because Frank is so concerned about his appearance and self-presentation, he seems related to these characters. I mean, the movie begins with extreme close-up of his tweezing nose hairs in the bathroom mirror. I love how the camera stays behind him as he approaches the stage,
yes,
finally revealing his face when the camera turns around.
Yeah.
It makes me realize that there's a mystery about this character. I'm not getting to see all of him right away. Kind of the way, to be honest, that Steven Spielberg introduces Schindler, Liam Neeson in Schindler's List. We don't get to see him till the camera finally turns around. I'm not comparing the two films, but Frank, too, will be a mystery, a hero to the community. He's hiding not only a secret private life, but fraudulent profiteering. Even in prison, he touches up his face. So could you talk a little about playing characters who cultivate a public face? I mean, are there any connections among Tassone, Barnum, and Hart, or at least how you play them? Because it's so much about reinvention, what you show to the public. Is that something that you ever think about?
All the time. And by the way, in my own life as well. Shakespeare said it, all the world's a stage and we're merely players. And, people often say to me, how on earth do you do that? How do you act? And I'm like, I bet you play 4 or 5 different roles every day superbly. You're a slightly different person at work probably than you are with the bus driver, than you are with your children, that you are with your parents. Like, we manage in life to put on masks and build our persona for whatever we need to achieve. Whatever our desire is, we find a way to be. And for someone like Frank, I think that's exacerbated. He was a perfectionist, is a perfectionist, and very, very, very ambitious and really wanted to make a difference. So for him, everything became, I think, about earning that respect and earning that success. And it just sort of built to the point where I don't think that itch can ever be scratched if you're looking to scratch it. It can't be. And for Frank, and for many of us, I think. And I'm a public figure, which I don't think I ever thought I was going to be when I was younger. So I have to watch it in myself as well. Am I being authentic when I'm off camera? Am I being authentic now on this? I really try hard to be authentic and keep the false self for when I'm acting. But it's really difficult,
Good. And I like the question that just came in from Angeline, one of our students. I love opening scenes, and for Bad Education more than others, the end really is in the beginning. Did you film the first and last scenes at the school on the same day or close together? What are the challenges or joys from an acting perspective of the non-chronological style of film production?
Thanks, Angeline. And by the way, I just want to say thank you, Annette, and to all the students in the class. I have been dropping into classes, the Columbia, it's the MFA, is it?
That's right.
The MFA program, and it's been a great joy, and I've learned a lot, particularly on opening sequences of film. So thank you for highlighting that. Corey would be very happy. We shot it at the same location, but not on the same day. I remember when we shot the closing scene, my memory of it is it really snuck up on me. I think the opening scene had been very clearly described to me. I knew what that was going to be. I understood what the shot was. That closing scene, we did a number of different takes on it because Corey wasn't 100% sure how the film would end emotionally, so we wanted a bunch of different things. It was not the same day, I don't think, but it would have been, if not the same day, like the day after. And it's a good question about chronological order. As a theater actor, trained theater actor, this was the one thing about film that we were warned about, and I was probably most frightened about. And so I've been very diligent in mapping out performances. So it's not that I prescribe what I'm going to be in a certain scene, but I absolutely know the emotional journey, so that if a director decides to pull up a scene from wherever, I know vaguely where I've been, what's going to come after. So it's not all of a sudden a very disjointed performance. And for me, the great actors can do that. And it takes a lot of restraint, because as an actor, you only do 2 minutes of film a day. So it's tempting to really just lay it all on the line, everything, and go for it. And you want to finish a day feeling like, nailed that, that was great. But actually, you need to know which scenes, how to calibrate them, which ones to throw away a little bit, and which ones you really need to lean in on. And I've learned that over the years.
Also from our class, Juan is asking, this has to be the first great film exclusively for online release. Roma had limited release. How did you feel about HBO acquiring it? Do you feel your decision validated by the quarantine?
It certainly, thanks, Juan. It certainly ended up in our favor. No one could see that coming. When we made it, I thought it was going to be a small independent film. That's sort of what we were making, and that's what we expected. And HBO, I think, does great quality, and I was really excited that they were excited about it. And they have been very, very supportive of it. And I think in the last year or two, it's become really clear that movies, let's say it went theatrically, it's a really, really tough environment for those things to work, and how many people go to see it. Even people who want to go and see it, it's harder and harder, and people don't seem to be going. And so part of me immediately was like, I think a lot more people will see this film, which I was happy about. And that's how it's turned out in the end. If that movie had gone to the cinema, I don't know how many people would have seen it. I'm not sure.
And these days in particular, HBO means you're getting way, way larger viewership than would have been the case otherwise.
Yeah.
I'm getting some of these questions this way. Louise is asking, what role would you say had the most lasting impact on you as an actor and a person, the one you learned the most from?
On stage, it would be The Boy from Oz. I really learned a lot in that. I really was not sure I could pull that one off. I was really reaching. And it's funny, that theme, to that point, I think Les Mis is the other one, because I'd seen Les Miserables, but I'd never read Victor Hugo's work. And I had a similar feeling of nervousness about playing such a literary iconic figure, let alone the musical theater people who had played it before. So, and for me, they just really both of them touched in on why I got into acting in the first place, which is to understand human nature, to understand why we're here. When I start off as an actor, I don't even know if I was thinking about doing it professionally. I was way more interested in who am I, why are we doing here, what's the point of it all. I was far more philosophical in a way. So tackling roles like Jean Valjean, which is a very philosophical piece, certainly makes you question humanity, makes you question priorities. And then something like Boy from Oz, which was, I just learned a lot about performing and ad-libbing and being in the moment, and stamina was certainly the hardest thing I've ever done. That'd be the two.
Okay. There are so many questions coming in right now that I'm never going to get to all of them, but I'll try my best. Ross was asking, what are some of the films and theater that inspired you to get into acting?
The first film I remember really making me, and this might sound strange, was Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think I was 11 or 12 when I saw it. The way I felt, that movie, I was just floored for days by that. I didn't know that was possible. That's really where my mind was blown. In terms of theatre, and then as I got older, it became more Kramer versus Kramer, Deer Hunter, those really great dramatic performances that I loved. Dog Day Afternoon, all of that sort of stuff for me was really what turned for me. And the other one, film-wise, was E.T. Again, I was young, and it's the first time I remember seeing my father cry. And I have much more of a memory of watching him cry, and he is not a crier at all. So, although more now, actually, as he gets older, I don't think he'd mind me saying that. That the power of a film that I thought was meant for me, and how it had touched my father. In terms of the theatre, I went to everything. My father took me to everything. And this is going to sound strange, but the thing that made me spend hours and hours of listening to records by our record player was seeing Man of La Mancha with Hugo Weaving at my high school. Now, I was not at that high school. Hugo Weaving, you guys probably know him, but if you don't, he was sort of the bad guy in The Matrix, and he's I think, one of the great Australian actors. And he was at my high school, and I remember going to see it, and I feel like I could just replay the film of that performance. I would have been 10 at the time. And that's the one that made me go, I want to be up there doing that. And I did all through high school.
Fantastic. From our class, Joshua Chun is asking, how do you feel about the saturation of superhero films today in the film industry? What was it like being part of the X-Men films early 2000s? Did it feel like you were creating something new?
Joshua, hey, absolutely. It was something new. I remember after we shot the film, I moved back to LA, and my agent said, you should really spend a few months here, meeting people, auditioning. And even though I was the lead in X-Men, I was just in rooms with 50 other actors. There was no sense that this movie was going to do anything, be anything. Friends of mine said, make sure you book another movie before this comes out, because the word on the street is not good. So no one had any idea really of what that movie was going to be. No one, or the genre. I think Kevin Feige, who now runs Marvel, was the assistant to Lauren Shaladonna on that movie, and I don't think even he knew what was going to happen. In terms of the proliferation, I have to say I've been really impressed with the quality of the movies. I think for me, Nolan took it to another level when he took on Batman, and that's all of a sudden opened things up and made, say, Logan, made by James Mangold, that movie possible. But a lot of the quality, I loved Iron Man 1. Like, the quality of the movies have been very, very good, very, very strong. And I'm being surprised how long the genre has lasted and how popular has become. But I applaud all the people who are really taking risks with it.
Good. Eveline asks, Kramer versus Kramer and The Deer Hunter are both with Meryl Streep. What would you do to be in a movie with Meryl Streep?
Anything. Anything. Can I just pick up a question? Someone just asked a question. Is there anything you learned in Professor Insdorf's class that you think will influence your acting choices in the future? If so, how so? Yeah. It's already influenced how I watch movies. I think when you see classic movies and you're immersing yourself in that level of artistry and courage, because all of the movies you've chosen were very courageous for their time, whether it be structurally, performance-wise, directorially, whatever it is. And I think that has probably just made me try to see a bigger picture of every script that comes in, whether it be, well, how does this fit in? How does this help me grow as an artist? Why are we telling this story? I don't care if someone calls me and go, you got to do this movie. It's going to be huge. It's based on this IP and it's going to be massive. I go, okay, that's not a reason to make a movie. Why? And I think through dissecting opening scenes, watching the way the camera is used, what the filmmaker is trying to say at all moments, not just with the storyline or the actors, but with the sound, with the editing, with the use of camera. What is the filmmaker trying to make us feel? And it's definitely made me more conscious, and I think I'll be hopefully a little more discerning.
Well, thank you. I wasn't even going to choose that question.
I know you wouldn't. That's why.
What can I tell you? I have to admit that the majority of the questions I've seen so far have been asking about The Music Man. Whether it's Trudy, who wrote that she is planning to come in, she has tickets, she's going to come in from London to see it, to a number of people wanting to make sure that it is still happening, despite obviously quarantine moment. Could you just tell us what this is, and are you any preparation even now at home?
We did let's answer the first question. It's going to happen when Broadway is safe and ready. And I don't know when that is. I don't think anyone does, but hopefully sooner rather than later. We were meant to start rehearsals on June 29th. And then I think the first preview is mid-September. So there is a little bit of time, but my gut feeling says that may get pushed a little bit, but I'm not sure. I really don't know. And what was the second part of the question?
Are you doing any sort of preparation at home, even, to get in shape vocally or
Hang on physically? 1 second.
Yeah.
I don't have this there as a prop, but this was just sitting below. Can you see that? I'm doing various hat tricks and things like that. I've been playing with things. I sang the score right through today. Most days I sing it. I still have singing lessons every week. I get together on Zoom with my musical director, and I also get together with my choreographer occasionally. We just go through different things. I'm not a spring chicken, so I can't afford just to sit around on my couch and then in 3 months hope to turn it on. We also, I'm so lucky to work with Scott Rudin, the producer. He's just a worker and he loves the exploration. There were 42 drafts of The Music Man. And there's a wonderful book by Meredith Willson about the process of creating The Music Man. And so we're going through 42 drafts. We're just going to see if there's anything in there that maybe didn't resonate at the time, might resonate now, songs that were cut. We've done workshops. Sutton and I did a couple of weeks of dancing back in February. And that's Sutton Foster who's starring with me. So yes, we're doing some prep.
Wow. Someone is asking, any possibility that this Music Man production starring you will also be filmed? Is a motion picture being discussed?
Nope.
Okay.
No, I have no idea about that. We'll just focus on doing it on stage. We'll see after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And related to that, Stephanie from our class was asking, any plans for you to bring The Greatest Showman to Broadway to star in it live?
Thanks, Stephanie. No plans at present. That was discussed after the movie became a big hit. There was a lot of talks about what should happen with it. I did a tour last year. I went around the world. I sang a bunch of the songs from it during that. One of the obstacles, there's 9 songs in the movie, and I actually hadn't quite realized this. I think the average for a Broadway musical is 17 songs. So there was like a good 8 more songs to write. Justin and Bench, who wrote the music, literally are doing 19 things. They are just the most popular, for good reason, kids on the block. So there's no plans at present, but it kind of makes sense to me that it will exist there at some point. And I know that by doing workshops. We did a number of workshops in a Broadway style for the movie because we wanted to show the money people what it was. And we knew just on the page that wouldn't work. So I know I've done enough stuff in the room to know when something would translate. And I know that would translate. Okay. But there's no plan.
And similarly, Pauline was asking, might the Music Man also go to London's West End? Is there any talk about that?
There's not any talk about it. I have signed on for a year here, which I love. I've done that twice before, and it's been the happiest years of my life. So I've only done it once before on Broadway. Yeah, I've done it a bunch of times before in Australia, but and in England. So there's no plan at present, but we'll see. Who knows?
Okay.
Yeah, and Robert Preston did it for 4 years, right? Your Brennan did The King and I for 21, so you never know.
Okay. Kristen is asking this. You obviously seem to have a deep love for filmmaking. You're an actor. You have some exec producer credits under your belt. Have you ever considered writing or directing a film? If so, what type of film would you want to make?
Well, it's a good question. I love film more now, I think, than I ever have. Annette, you're part of that. As I said to Annette, and the reason I did the film class was I've been on 25 or 30 films and I've learned a lot over that time. I've had some amazing experiences and I always felt really ignorant on the sets. People would talk about movies that I hadn't seen. It's not like I don't watch films, but I just felt like a punter, like an average Joe. I watched, films. Theatre was more my thing growing up. So I came to it late, but I do love it now. I think I was a little intimidated by it at first. It's a very different skill to master than the theatre. I felt more at home on a stage, I think, than I did on a film set, I would say for maybe 10 years. I said before, you probably never act for more than 2 or 3 minutes at a time, like even less now. A 5-minute scene might happen once in your career, Things like Marriage Story are very, very rare, So whereas, of course, as an actor on stage, apart from interval for an hour and a half or 2 hours, you're telling the story. And so that took me a long time to come to terms with. But I've noticed in myself that I love more than anything being with a great director with great taste that I trust, that allows me to play, allows me to go left, right, just go with my instincts, knowing that it doesn't matter what is recorded or filmed, that director will know how to edit, to craft that performance. And I know there's a lot of actors who don't feel that kind of trust. And I say that, and that's my favorite thing to do. I think I'm quite indecisive as a person, which can be my strength as an actor. I don't think I make harsh decisions. I go in and I see what's going to happen. And I just don't have that burning desire to be a director or a writer. The other thing about directing, and I know there's a bunch of students here, it's a really tough job. It is, I'm going to say it's 16, 18 hours a day minimum for 18 months. And I just don't have the time for that right now with family stuff.
Okay. Now, a couple of questions came in relatedly. First, this was about half an hour ago. Lisa in Philly wanted to say hi to Deb and to know how is the family holding up in quarantine. And then Patricia just asked about what have you learned during this time of quarantine that will serve you moving forward?
Great question. Thanks, for asking that. We're all healthy and doing really well. I have a 19 and 14-year-olds. I'm loving being with them. The trouble is not always my schedule. The trouble is, 19 and 14-year-olds don't want to hang with their parents. So this has kind of been probably much better for me than it has been for them. And honestly, the one thing I was talking to Deb about this morning, I realized this is not, I wasn't working. It wasn't like I was on a job. I'd finished a job. So this was an in-between period for me. But I find it difficult to slow down. I find I have an engine driving me to, got to be improving this. Let's work on the music. Let's work on the steps. Let's work on that. Let's look at the script. What would be a productive book to read? All of that sort of thing. It's taken me longer, and I think I'm going to try to listen to that a little more as time goes on.
Okay. Then we just got from Maggie a question about any advice for aspiring directors about how to work with actors.
Yeah. Be honest. Try the closer relationship you can have. And I've learned this a little bit late in the piece. It's okay to say you're scared, because I promise you the actor is scared too. It's also okay to, I think you just have to set up a relationship where you feel you can be honest with each other. And the best situations I've had with directors certainly have been when there is just that free flow of ideas, of emotion, of honesty. They're looking at you as an actor in a very vulnerable place. You're performing, you're laying it all on the line. There'll be moments of any performance where you really have to rip your heart open. And I can tell you, for example, Darren Aronofsky, who then my experience with him, I will never forget. He was very rarely by the monitor. He was often by the camera. And there was a whole sequence in that movie, a third of that movie, where I was pretty much on my own in a spaceship. And he would be literally face next to the camera. And his presence, I can tell you, helped me. Like, it's a kind of intimacy in a way, where an actor needs to trust you in order to give you everything. So I would say that is the most important thing.
Great. By the way, I should mention, you're getting so many, not questions, but compliments, people telling you how much they appreciate the way you obviously put your heart into your characters. And I do have to mention Katrina's point. I met my husband working on The Greatest Showman. Thank you, Hugh. You truly were most professional and beyond kind human.
Oh, that is very nice. Congratulations.
And in terms of the roles that are not necessarily the sweetest characters, Layla from our class is asking, how did the challenge of playing an image-obsessed, sometimes dishonest, but charismatic character in Bad Education compare to your similar role 15 years ago in Scoop?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Did you think about that connection when you
I actually didn't know. I never thought about that. I think Scoop, it's just more Machiavellian. He knew what he was doing all along. He was like a snake in the grass. And with Frank, I believe, still believe, he thinks of himself as a really good person, dedicated to education and service of kids who got led astray and did a bad thing, but not a bad person. And I don't think of him as a bad person. And he was a great educator. So one thing I learned from Jerry Zaks, from working with him even recently, is always preserve every opportunity for a happy ending. And if you think about it, that's what we're all doing in life. In every situation, we want it to go well. We want the date to go well. We want dinner with the kids to go well. When all of the stuff we're doing when we go to bed, we want to have a good night. Like, we're always fighting things to go well. The challenge of playing someone like Frank is there's no such thing as well, it's perfect. So when everything has to be perfect all the time and things are starting to crumble around you and you still need to maintain that perfect, the turmoil within just gets ratcheted up. But constantly on the outside, even though underneath the water is like this, on the outside is this in control leader perfect guy. And that was the juiciest and most difficult thing to play.
Okay. We had a question from Josephina. What was it like working with a female director, Lisa Joy Nolan? And I'll just elaborate on that. I see that the film you have in post-production now is Reminiscence.
Yeah.
The director, Lisa Joy, is Christopher Nolan's sister-in-law. It co-stars Rebecca Ferguson, who in The Greatest Showman played Jenny Lind, as well as Thandie Newton. Can you tell us a little about that?
It's an amazing script. It's one of those scripts that everyone's wanted to be part of. It's been around for a little while. Lisa has, with her husband, created and directed Westworld, the TV series. If you like that movie, you're going to love this. So it's got that same very intelligent science fiction angle with lots of twists and turns. It's really a film noir. I think you're going to like it, Annette. I went back and watched a lot of Bogart, and structurally, it's very much set up as a film noir. The femme fatale played by Rebecca Ferguson, the girl Friday, the assistant who's secretly in love with him, the unrequited love played by Thandie Newton. But it's set in a world not in the too distant future in Miami, where Miami is now underwater. Things are so hot and the water has risen so much that it operates like Venice. And the people actually live at night. Schools are at nighttime. It's just too hot during the day. So all the underground is actually happening in broad daylight, harsh. So it's visually very interesting. And it plays with this whole idea of memory. In this time in the future, the job that I have is I have a machine that can take you in to relive any memory. Not just in a play as a film, you actually go back and relive it. So the very opening of the scene is a vet returned from war who's lost his legs. He comes in once a week to remember being 13, running in his father's house with his dog out the backyard, something simple like that. The second person to come in lost their keys the night before, and that's Rebecca Ferguson. So that's a little bit about the story. Lisa is an astonishing director and writer. I loved working with her, every single second of it. I didn't tell her because, these are the rules of being in Hollywood. When you take a meeting, she didn't want me to read the script. She said, I just want you to hear my vision of the movie. And she showed me some stuff. In my head, I was saying, yes. Of course, out loud, I said, well, obviously, this sounds very interesting. I'd love to read the script. But in my head, I was already in. She's so persuasive and so prepared and so amazing. And it was a great joy. Excuse the pun.
Great. Trudy is asking, how did your own tour, TMTMTS, compare to appearing in stage musicals playing someone else?
This was like something completely different.
And there was also a question about, might there be a DVD of that available at some point?
I don't know about it there being a DVD. We did shoot some footage of it. I don't know. I'm not a lover of watching DVDs of concerts myself. There's been a couple I've seen, but I'm never excited to watch it. I'm more interested when I see them of seeing what happened behind the scenes, or what was happening backstage, or what the experience was. And obviously, when I've watched a lot of them when I was thinking about doing this, I also just think there's some sacred contract in the theater, even if it's a 20,000 seat arena, that something's going to happen or could happen that night that has never happened before. And you go in with that contract alive and well. And the moment it's on a screen on a DVD, I think there's an assumption that this has been edited and sound adjusted, and there's just a feeling that you're going to see a sanitized version of it. So I just don't love it. It was an amazing experience beyond anything I could have ever imagined. I mean, we did 90 plus concerts in cities all around the world, traveling on tour buses, and it was an out-of-body experience for someone who is an actor. I was surprised when I got into musical. You remember, I was just a theater actor who got into Beauty and the Beast out of drama school, and that surprised me. So standing at the O2 in London with 20,000 people for 6 nights in a row was otherworldly to me, and something I'll never forget.
Great. Now, a couple of people have mentioned how much they appreciate a particular scene from Bad Education, the accelerate scene, when you're illustrating to the intrusive mother and the boy. So Karen and Janet, they were asking about that, mentioning he's still educating there, Frank is, but how that scene was prepared and done.
Yeah. I'm guessing the people asking the question are teachers. I've had a lot of teachers email me that I know go, love that scene. I think the frustration of a lot of teachers of dealing with some parents, maybe the pushier parents, I think must be very frustrating. Teachers do it for the love of it and service. And when I read that scene, of course, this is a moment where there's no possibility of a happy ending. For the Jerry Zaks sort of analogy, it's all come crashing down, and he kind of realizes it. So he's kind of got nothing to lose, and the facade goes, and all his frustrations with the annoying parents, the annoying administrators, or everything just comes down, and he lets loose. And actually, in the script, and it wasn't in the final movie, at the end of that scene, the mother and the child leave in shock, and he just stands there realizing everything's lost, and the drip of the water from above just comes down, and water just cascades all over him. And that was the last thing we shot. We shot that scene on the very last day. So I finished the set completely drenched, 3:00 in the morning in Brooklyn.
Wow. And Edith just added, shout out to the teachers working during lockdown.
Yes, here.
Indeed. Okay, I'm really juggling because I have like 30 great questions. All right, so the mom in the accelerate scene was in Boy from Oz?
Stephanie Kurtzuba.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Oh my goodness, thank you, Ellen and Patricia and others for pointing that out. I did not.
Ellen's work, yeah, hi Ellen, yeah. That's Steph Kurtzuba, and it was so great. She was just so awesome, and the child, Stephanie's child, actually played her child in the movie. So when she got the part, she said, to Corey, the director, you should let my son read. He's never been in a movie before, and I don't know how I feel about it, but I was just reading the scene with him, and I think it's going to be really good. He was astonishing. He was absolutely, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but apparently it is impossible to yawn on stage, like for real. Like, I have never seen anyone yawn for real. There's a level of relaxation you need to yawn. Well, Stephanie's kid, on about take 3, did a yawn in the middle of his close-up, and I was like, that's about as relaxed an actor as I've ever seen. That's the first yawn I've ever seen.
Wow. Amazing. One of the questions was, if you were in quarantine with only one Hugh Jackman film that you could have in your space, which one would it be?
If they come on, I generally look away. I find it difficult. Which one would it be?
While you're thinking about it, I'm just going to mention something that I happen to notice because I channel surf a lot, just looking at what's available while I'm in quarantine on any given evening. When I look at HBO and Showtime, and sometimes 1 or 2 other channels, there are at least 3 Hugh Jackman films on in any given week, sometimes 3 at a time, because HBO's got Bad Education, and then there'll be a Van Helsing, or there will be an X-Men film. I've been noticing, or Greatest Showman, you are so wonderfully omnipresent on television these days through your movies. So now you can answer the question.
My dream, to be honest, is after I'm gone, let's hope TCM is still around, that some of my movies make it onto their rotation. That's the dream, right?
Okay.
I'm going to say The Prestige, mainly because I think there's so many wonderful different performances, and every time I watch it, I get something different out of it, plot-wise, story-wise. Chris just had so many things, and Jonah had so many things laid in there. So I'm going to say that.
Okay. Now, we're not going to get to all the questions, but I'm going to tell you that Wald asked, could we make this chat 2 hours? And the very simple answer is no, because following our talk at 7:30, Rob Reiner is going to be in conversation for 92Y with Marlo Thomas and Phil Donahue.
Right.
And that is why we cannot go beyond this particular hour. And by the way, if anyone wants to register, there is still room in the chat format. But we have about 2 or 3 minutes left. I just want to say that Edith was saying, in response to some of these issues, we understand you're so great, you're so busy, just come back. So the other main thrust of this is that we have every hope that The Music Man will open on Broadway at some point in the fall, and that at that point, when everyone is allowed to be outside again and in a public hall again, we are hoping that you will come back to talk more about The
Of
Music Man
course, I would love to.
in the
Of
flesh.
of course. And by the way, it struck me the other day that The Music Man is really a musical about belief. It's a very classic American musical. It's really about belief. And so I think message-wise, it will be a nice antidote as we're coming back. And I know there's not long left, and I just want to thank all of you for tuning in, for supporting 92nd Street Y. It's an amazing institution that is really, I think, one of the foundations of what I call the soul of New York. And so it's been amazing. I participate in the Sunday night class. I highly recommend. $150 as a donation, and you get to be in Annette's film class. It's just about to start this Sunday, actually, another 5-week one by popular demand. Check it out. But if you go on their website, it's Sunday nights at 8 o'clock. So you watch the movie before, and then you get a lecture on it, and it will really blow your mind. And I want to thank you, Annette, for teaching me what you've taught me. And I also want to thank the students in the class. I can see Juan there and a bunch of the other students who are here. Thank you so much for allowing me to be part of it and allowing me to feel so comfortable just walking into your classroom Tuesday afternoons and just sitting in. It's been one of the joys of my last 3 months. So thank you.
Oh, I so appreciate it. And by the way, one of the things we realized, my students and I, you're not just an extremely talented entertainer, and you're not just, as we can all see, a really nice guy. You're very smart. There were times when you came up with comments about the films that actually floored me. I had to rethink a scene in a movie because I had not thought of a perception you came up with, like The Crown of Thorns with Before the Rain. I went, whoa, So it's wonderful when you discover all these other layers of greatness in somebody that one admires for the public persona and the talent. So,
But
you're very lucky.
Don't expect a paper from me. And I wanted to say to all the students, I know you've all got probably exams and tests and papers, and I'm thinking of you. It must be a very strange time for you all. And for those graduating, even more strange. So yeah, thinking of you guys right now.
Thank you. We appreciate that. My students are, in fact, handing in their papers yesterday, today, and I'm getting ready to read a whole lot of fascinating, I believe, commentary about the films that we've been watching. I apologize to all of you whose questions could not get asked. I think we've seen about 150 questions minimum, and I've been trying to follow all of them. But rest assured that there will be, we should all stay well and healthy, opportunities for us to gather again, to ask Hugh Jackman more about his craft, his vision, his humanity. I didn't even get to ask questions about your humanitarian work, which I find remarkable in addition to all that you're doing. So I just say to all of you, until next time. And Hugh, as most of these comments are now just coming at us about 10 per second, thank you. Thank you for not just being with us, but for the constant warmth, intelligence, and humanity that you've been manifesting for many years. May it continue.
Thank you so much, Annette. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye for now. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.